Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 110th Annual California Art Club Gold Medal Exhibition, which is held at the Hilbert Museum in Chapman University in Orange. I am delighted to be asked to comment on some of my favorite paintings, but I must tell you that this is one of the best shows I've ever attended, and it was very hard limiting it to about 20 paintings to talk on. So if I do not talk about a painting that you like, I am sorry, but I just want to generally talk about some of the highlights, but there are many, many more. And I know you'll see them when you come to visit or when you do the virtual tour. So the first painting I want to talk about, and these will be in alphabetical order, it will be a painting called Diana of the Hunt by Peter Adams. This is a painting of a sculpture. It is a massive monumental sculpture of Diana, the ancient Greek and Roman goddess of the hunt, with her attendants and her stag. This statue in real life is at the Forest Lawn in Hollywood, but Peter Adams is remarkable in his ability to capture the light and the texture. There's this beautiful soft light coming from behind, which is somewhat highlighting the work around the edges, and it has a three-dimensional feel to it. But it is so accurately drawn. It is so well painted. There's a lot of work here. And as you look at Diana and you look farther down, you see her attendants. They look like they're actually made of marble. It looks like you're not looking at a painting at all, but that you're looking at a three-dimensional, very, very hard surface. Peter is a wonderful painter, and this is a great painting. It just really convincing effect of three-dimensional form. Next, please. This is called Shell of the Gods, and it's by Bella Bacci. Bella is a remarkable sculptor. He is able to make a very positive statement. He loves to play with form. This is a shell, but it has been altered. The crest of the shell has been made a lot larger than it appears in real life. So there's a lot of idealized form. After all, it's the shell of the gods. So it has to be the most perfect, the most exactly, and the largest and the most beautiful shell. And he does that. And the sculpture has a very hard feel to it because there's not a lot of soft edges on it. There's a lot of sharp edges, but also the crest is the dynamic, like a sunburst, a very attractive form that immediately grabs your attention. Again, Bella is really good at capturing these idealized form. Next. This is called Spring at Cypress Point, and Cypress Point is up in the Carmel, Monterey area. It's by Brian Blood, who's a remarkable artist. A beautiful sense of light. This is what strikes me first about this painting. It has very cool colors. It's tonal. There's not a lot of bright reds, bright yellows, bright blues. It's very soft, and there's very few colors per se, but there's lots of tones of those colors. There's dozens of tones of the greens and the browns and the color of the sand. And that creates a very soft, a very relaxing. It is not a challenging painting. The painting is set towards the end of the day. So you see very low raking light, and it brings out the shapes and brings out the forms. So as we look at the central image, which is a strong pyramid, a very stable image, and it's full of beautiful detail, we're also drawn to the background. There's this very soft background of a spit of land going out into the ocean. But the artist has composed this painting so that we see what he wants us to see. And in this case, it's all the beautiful detail, all the beautiful light, and a very soft, harmonized color of the foreground and that's gentle hill of sand. This painting by Nikita Budkov is entitled Some Kind of Monster, and it is. It's a scary painting. There's some very harsh articles in it. There's some chain, there's some bullets, there's a gas mask. It is the worst situation of the COVID epidemic. It is, in fact, a portrait of the COVID. It's still life, but it's got these very interesting but sometimes scary pieces. And COVID is a scary thing. And we've all been living in isolation. You see the gas mask, which we don't use, but you see the surgical mask, and you see the toilet paper, which was in very, very high demand at the beginning when there was a shortage of it. There's a can of beans. This is like the last resort to hold out against COVID. And again, it's a wonderful painting. There's beautiful light. The detail is excellent. And the goal of the artist was to scare you. It's a monster, and it scares me. This is something I don't want to go through again. So again, it's a scary painting, but it's an effective painting. It's what the artist intended. Next. This beautiful small painting by Bernard Fallon is called Evening Peace Redondo. And to me, it's a small painting, but it's a gem. It's a painting that says hope. The painting starts out dark at the bottom. There's some wavy lines, and then it gets a little bit of white, then it goes dark again. But as you look up at the painting, you are uplifted. This is a spiritual painting. And as you move up the painting, you go from a dark and moody foreground to this uplifting sky. The clouds are parting, there's a ray of sunshine. So it really carries this idea that there's hope. Perhaps it's a portrait of the end of COVID, but it has that meaning. It pulls you in and then elevates you to a much brighter top, a much brighter future. Next, please. This is by Mark Farina. It's called Wharf Number 2, Monterey, and it's clearly a painting of the Monterey fishing area. But it is a remarkable painting because it draws you in immediately, and your eye goes directly to the brightest part of the painting, which is the wharf and the housing, the building there where the fishing fleet comes in. But in addition to that, as you look at the painting, there's a dark place at the bottom, and it progressively goes up to a brighter. But there's also a big blank area of ocean, of the sea at the bottom. But those branches of the cypress trees pull you towards the center. And as you go up, the branches get shorter and shorter. So there's more and more of what it is the artist wants you to see. It has tremendous light. It has beautiful detail. It is a type of painting that just makes you feel so good when you look at it. So it's a very successful painting. Next, please. This is by Eric Feguan, and it's called Happy Time on the Beach. And this is a happy painting. And you see two children, which immediately brings you back to childhood. They are the only thing that's really moving in this painting in terms of motion. So your eye goes to them, and they are having a great time. The older sister on the left is stepping carefully, and the younger one seems to be leaping around. And, if I was dead, I'd say, be careful, be careful. But it is it's uplifting painting. And the action is directly in front of the viewer. And in the background, there's this really wonderful set of rocks that have a bit of a danger to them. But the girls in the foreground, they're having a good time. The other thing that's important about this painting that people rarely see is that it's backlit, or as we say in the art world, the French world, contre-jour. So the light is coming from the back and creating shadows that point to the viewer. And because the light is coming from the back, it highlights the edges of the figures, giving them a more heavenly, a more gentle glow to them. So again, this is a very important aspect of the painting, that it is contre-jour, and it is a very successful painting. This painting is entitled Trolley Station, and it's by Robin Hall. I've known Robin for many, many years, and she's an excellent painter, but this one is really a wonderful, bold statement. It is a set of massive structures. These are not living structures. These are hard construction structures. There's a lot of darkness in the center. And as you look around, you see only a few people, and they're isolated. They're all by themselves. So they are kind of secondary to this world of massive industrial structures. This reminds me a lot of Edward Hopper and the way he captured the isolation of city life. But the forms are terrific. They're gorgeous, massive forms. And as you look carefully, the people are unimportant, but they're put there, but they're not together. They're not having a good time. They're not doing anything with each other. This is a painting called The Travelers. It's by Bruce Horn. And it is a really detailed, it's a large painting. This has a lot of things going on. There's a lot of work for one thing, but there are a lot of figures. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of lights, a lot of reflections, a lot of shadows. This is, again, a gorgeous, big painting. And as the viewer looks at it, you see all the people, but you're drawn in by those perspective lines, the ones at the top of the ticket counter that go from left to right, the ticket counter line itself, which we can only see in the foreground, but we know it's going all the way through, and then the base of the counter. All those lines converge to a vanishing point somewhere in the middle right of the painting. But that creates the sense of depth. And the other way the artist creates a sense of depth is that we know that these people are roughly the same size. Some are taller, some are smaller. But when you look at it as a flat surface, the figure in the foreground on the left is a lot bigger than figures in the background. So again, that's a linear perspective thing, because the same way you draw the series of the lights as they get farther and farther away, the top of the heads of the people also creates a line. So you create a big space, and the artist is very adept at filling that big space. He's not shy about putting in dozens of people, and they're all done very well, and the luggage is done very well. The lighting is excellent. It's soft, it's interior, and it is just a really beautiful big painting with a lot of people, a lot of work, and a lot of appeal. This is by Tim Horn, and Tim is a remarkable artist because he's very much in the automotive world. Almost all of his paintings that I've seen has at least one automobile in it. And that brings it to the present, that brings it to everyday life. This is a soft, it looks like an autumn, late afternoon view of a deserted street. In the foreground is a 1957 Ford pickup. That's a great car, and it's in really good condition. So you immediately see this antique car, but you also see the soft lines, the light, and the way that the trees are illuminated. And why are the leaves bright? It's because this is, again, a backlit painting. The shadows come toward the viewer, and there's a sense of kind of a highlighting of the edges of the cars, of the pole, of the telephone line. But it is a wonderfully set, a very moody, a very gentle. It's just tremendous sense of three-dimensional space with the light making everything come to life. This is by Thomas Jefferson Kitts. Again, I've known Thomas for many years. He's a wonderful painter. This is a small watercolor, but it is full of terrific artistic power. Most of the painting, maybe 60, 70%, seems to be empty, but that just sets a background for what we are made to look at, which is this coconut palm that's hanging over the water. And the light here is coming from the upper left. It's almost backlit, but not quite. But you see this tremendous and very difficult, detailed rendition of each of the little fronds and the way the light is passing through them or going around them. But we are immediately directed to that center tree that's leaning over the water, and it is full of light and is full of very tight detail. This is a watercolor. Watercolor as a way of getting away from the artist, but Thomas knows what he's doing, and I really like this little painting. This is a painting by Emily Lee, and it's a remarkable painting. It immediately caught my eye, not because it's beautiful and has great light, which she does, but the way she structured the painting. She is able to really capture the feel, the texture, even the taste of those oranges and the leaves. But she puts the foreground in the upper part of the painting, where almost every other painting, the foreground is in the lower part of the painting and you work your way back. But here she takes you immediately to the top of the painting and you see this beautiful light, this beautiful detail. And then your eye goes to the background and you see Santa Cruz Island there. This is painted in Montecito. And it is in a far, far distance. And then there's this span of the channel. And then you come down the painting to the city of Montecito and down to that little ridge, which is very detailed. And then your eye goes back up to the oranges. So she really is a wonderful, capable user of composition. Composition is, according to Robert Henry, the great American painter and art teacher, composition is the art of controlling the viewer. And I am controlled when I look at this painting. It is really a wonderful painting, but it is unique, it is different. This is by Heather Martin. It's called A Day in the Studio, and it's a watercolor with gouache. Watercolor is transparent. You could see what's underneath it, like pencil lines. Gouache is a type of watercolor that's been thickened, and you cannot see what's underneath it, but they're both water-based, and they're both applied with a brush and with water the same way. But this is, to me, is a portrait of the artist. It's her studio. And you see that she was going to paint this beautiful vase of zinnias, or whatever flowers they are. And then she looked at and said, my gosh, there's a lot of interesting things in this background. Well, that's my interpretation of it. But it looks like we are looking at the vase. That's the most detailed, the most highlighted part of the painting. But the background is the creation, the tools that are used to create what we're looking at. So it's a portrait of the artist in many ways. It's a portrait of the studio. And it shows there's a lot of work and a lot of tools involved. But the way she handles the paint, the watercolor, the foreground, the background, very wonderful. I really like this painting. This is a painting entitled Always Windy in Little Tuscany. It's by Clark Mitchell. I was wondering, I said, this looks like Palm Springs. I looked it up. Yep, there's a district in Palm Springs called Little Tuscany. Clark is a pastel painter. He is one of the top national pastel painters, and pastel has a completely different application than watercolor, oil paint, or any other thing. You really have to learn pastel to make it work like this. This is a bright painting. It's full of light and it's full of detail. 2/3 of the painting is sky and this magnificent cloud structure. But as you look closer, your eye is drawn to this beautiful detail that's at the bottom third of the painting. So you see a typical Palm Springs house and these tall palm trees, but your eye is drawn there's a perspective line right down that street. And as you go down, the artist shows you more and more little detail, and it's getting harder to see as you get farther back. So the artist is using linear perspective by using that line from the street to take you back into the painting. But there's also aerial perspective. From the foreground to the background, there's a lot of mist. There's a lot of desert air, and that affects the colors and changes the colors. All this is elementary to an artist like Clark Mitchell, and to most of the artists in this exhibition. They're all professional artists. They're all good artists. But this caught my eye because of the really vivid way that he combines the massive, gorgeous, cloudy sky and this intricate little detailed foreground with the trees and the houses. This is called Building Bridges, and it's by Lisa Mozzini McDill. I've known Lisa for many years, remarkable painter. But this to me I really like this painting because it is a gentle painting in most ways. But as you look at it, normally the perspective lines, which in the previous one we saw was the street, here we have the freeway. You want to get on the freeway, but you are immediately grabbed by the orange and the browns and the grays of the bridge being built. So you are taken by this dynamic force that brings your eye up to the upper right corner, and then you follow all the way down. And if you look carefully, the street that you finally get onto eventually winds to the right, and there's more of the highway there with the bridges as it crosses that stream. But again, this is a painting of dynamism, and you are unable to take your eye off that bridge being built. And it goes straight to that, and then the artist says, I want you to do this. I want you to follow this line and look at the rest of the painting. I think this is a dynamic painting and a wonderful painting. Well done, Lisa. This is a clay sculpture, which I think will eventually be made into bronze. It's usually the way it works. But it's by Ismael Ordaz, and it's called The Girl from Napoli. And it is a very attractive bust, clay bust of a beautiful woman who is looking at you or towards your direction in a somewhat inviting look. But again, the artist is able to capture the forms, the facial features, the character, but most of all, there's this very intense communication between the viewer and the sculpture. The woman is looking at you and you're looking at the woman. Remarkable piece, excellent, excellent. This is by Richard Probert, and I've known Richard for many years. He used to come in and visit the Irvine Museum a lot, and we used to chat, but it has a long title. It's called Shadows Beneath the North Atwater Multimodal Bridge. Anyway, but as you look at this, you are immediately taken by the shadow of that bridge. It's a very intense shadow against a very white background. And the shadow against the white is done in tones of blue and violet. It is not a black shadow because in nature there is light everywhere. And as you look at this painting, you are set into a very realistic stream. You're under this bridge, but as you get closer to the center of the painting, it goes completely abstract. This is an excellent combination of having realism and then finding the abstraction in the realism. And it's done very well. There's this gorgeous light, lots of detail, but the real star of this painting is the shadow on that bridge support, a very abstract looking set of lines. Very powerful painting. This is by me in situ. It's called The Old Fishing Boats in Laoshan. And Mian is one of the greatest artists working today. And he is a gentleman. He is a very nice, very capable artist. And as you look at this, there's not a lot of color. It's a very tonal painting. And that means it's going to be soft. It's going to be gentle. There's nothing fighting, nothing. There's no greens fighting reds or yellows fighting purples. It's a very gentle, quiet painting, and your eye is immediately drawn to the exacting detail in those three boats in the foreground. As you look at it, it is a delight to see all that beautiful detail. And the detail is so fascinating that it's hard to get your eyes off of it. But the artist points the boats in the direction towards the distant mountains. So he wants you to follow those lines towards the background. And if that doesn't work, the lines of the spit of lands that are going into the lake or the sea also draw you towards the background. And when you get to the background, it's a very soft, gentle series of purple hills. Again, they're not purple in real life, but because they're so far away from the viewer, the atmosphere, the dust, the mist changes the color of those mountains. But overall, it's a detailed but very gentle and very quiet painting. There are no people there. The boats are at rest, and it is presented to you in this very exacting detail. This is called Pigments of My Imagination, a very clever title by Brenda Swenson. Brenda is an excellent watercolor painter, and you can see that she chose, again, to have a portrait of herself in effect by having a portrait of the tools of her trade. And the dynamic composition is caused by the angular aspect of the lines. She did not paint horizontal vertical lines. She painted angular lines, oblique lines. And that creates a sense of movement, a sense of dynamism. And as you look at all those paint tubes, it's like a portrait of every single paint tube. There's no two alike. They're individuals. They have their own personality. And it is a pigment of her imagination, because it's like a whole bunch of friends, and they all have their own character. They're all facial features, their own colors. And if you look at the painting, there's tremendous control of color. The only white, pure white in this painting are the top of those compartments. The side of the compartments are supposed to be white, but they're not getting direct light. They're getting reflected light. So you see all sorts of soft colors that are reflected off the side of the compartments, reflected off the tubes of the paint. But this is a very detailed, this is a very exacting painting. And watercolor, again, does what it wants to do. You have to control it. And sometimes it goes where you don't want it to go, but she knows what she's doing. She's been doing it for a long time, and she's mastered the medium. A remarkable painting with lots of beautiful little forms and colors. And finally, I want to talk about this painting by Yun Wei. It's called Timeless Memories. Her work, Yun's work, shows up in many of the past gold medal shows because she's so good. But generally, they're smaller paintings. This is a larger painting, but it is crazy with exact detail. There is endless detail, and when you see that, oh yes, there's a glass jar to the right of the flowers, but you look at it and there's details inside. There's even details inside the details. So it's amazing how this is done. The teacup in the center foreground has got reflected light that is just perfectly accurate. And all those beautiful objects are done so well. I've always respected her work, but this is a big one, and it is just full of gorgeous details. So I invite you to come and visit the exhibition. Look at these paintings. Again, I'm sorry I can only show you 20 of them, but there are so many more. It's a terrific exhibition. In my mind, it's the best one so far. And you will just be fascinated by all these wonderful works. And believe me, my house is full of art, as you can see. And I buy things that are meaningful to me, things that I want to wake up in the morning and look at. I don't buy necessarily as an investment, although I come from a family of art dealers, but I haven't ever sold one of my paintings, and they're going to be with me, and they're going to be with my wife, Linda. And then after that, my kids will either live with them or sell them. But buy what you like and live with it, because art is supposed to enrich your life. And that's exactly what almost all of these paintings in this show do. And the sculpture is terrific. The sculpture, some of it is massive in size, and it is very difficult to do sculpture as it gets bigger and bigger. So look at the sculpture, look at the paintings, and buy what you like. Enjoy the exhibition. Thank you.